we're going to take a look at solving absolute value problems. So hopefully when you think of absolute value, you think of a problem like this. Absolute value of positive 3 comes out to be 3. And a problem like this, the absolute value of negative 3 also comes out to be 3. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at absolute value equations. And so we're going to end up, instead of doing that portion of it, which was the simplifying part, we're going to try to solve an equation here. So we want to really know, the question is what can I put in for A, or what is 3 units away from 0 when I'm looking at absolute value of A is equal to 3? What numbers could A possibly be? That's what I want to know. And there's actually two possible answers. The first one is that the answer could be negative 3, and the second one is that it could be 3. I could plug in A equals 3 in there, and the absolute value of 3 is 3, just like we had shown up above. Okay, and I could plug a negative 3 in there, because the absolute value of negative 3 is also 3. Okay, so it's important that you realize that we're going to end up with two answers when we're looking at this, because we're looking for a distance away from 0. And I could either go to the left from 0 to get to the negative side, or to the right from 0 to get to the positive side. Now I can, of course, move that, and I can shift it, and I can add and subtract things on the inside of the parentheses or absolute values, just like I did with parentheses before. And so it's not always going to be away from 0, but when I don't have anything added or subtracted, that's going to be a distance away from 0. So let's take a look at some examples here and solving these equations. So this question for number 1 is I'm looking for a number that is 4 units away from 1. Okay, I want to know what things are 4 units away from 1. Well, I can do that on a number line. Okay, so if I have the number 1 here, I can go 4 units to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. That number is 5. And I can go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. This is 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And so I could end up with the answers of 5 and negative 3. Those are what two answers I'm going to end up with when I go through and solve this equation. Okay, that's the question. I want to know how many units, 4 units away from this number. So I'm 4 units away from the number 1. And so the way that that solves is that you try to get rid of the absolute value. So I want to get the absolute value by itself, which it already is, and then I want to get rid of the absolute value. Okay, and so I get rid of the absolute value by doing two equations, one to the negative side, so p minus 1 is equal to negative 4, and one to the positive side, p minus 1 is equal to 4. So now I add 1 to both sides on this side, so I get p is equal to negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. And I add 1 on this side, and so I get p is equal to 5. Okay, so I end up with p equals negative 3 and p equals 5, the same answers I got by thinking through the steps of the problem up above. Now on number 2, this is a little bit different. First of all, the absolute value is not by itself. It's got a divided by 10 underneath it. So first thing I want to do is get rid of that 10. So I multiply to get rid of the dividing by 10. And so I get x plus 4, still an absolute value on the left, and negative 1 times 10 is negative 10. Now I want to know what is negative 10 units away from negative 4. That's what the question asked me. Well, I can't go a negative 10 distance. I can't walk negative 10 miles. I can walk 10 miles, and it's either in the left direction or right direction if we're on a straight line. I can't go and walk negative 10. So there's no solution here. There are options of no solutions. When I take absolute value of something and I get the absolute value by itself, if it is equal to a negative number, that can't happen. So then this ends up being a no solution. So when I look at number 3 here, when I look at number 3, there's a lot of stuff around this absolute value. So I have to get rid of all of the stuff around here. So I want to start by subtracting 10. So I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. These cancel out, and so then I get negative 10, absolute value of negative 8k plus 4, absolute value. 10 minus 10 is equal to 0. It's really important that we keep these things lined up. Do whatever I do to the left, the same thing as I do to the right. So now I've still got to get that absolute value by itself, so I divide both sides by negative 10, when that happens, I get absolute value of negative 8k plus 4 is equal to 0 divided by negative 10 is 0. Now I got the absolute value by itself. Now I need to get rid of the absolute value. So this is where I split it. So I get negative 8k plus 4 is equal to 0. Because there's no negative 0, it's really just a redundancy for me to do the right-hand side as well. Okay, so because it's equal to 0, I only have to do 1. Well, this is a nice friendly equation. I can subtract 4. So negative 8k equals negative 4. And I ran out of room here, but I'm going to divide by negative 8. And k is equal to negative over a negative is a positive. 4 over 8, I can divide both of those by 4, and I get k is equal to 1/2. So now the question was how many or what number is 0 units away from the inside part? Okay, well 0 units away from the inside part is just going to be the inside part. And the inside part is actually 1/2 after I reduce it. Okay, and so the question still stands. In order to get rid of the absolute value though, I didn't really have to split the last two because one was a no solution, was equal to a negative, and 1 was equal to 0, which it doesn't make sense to have a negative 0, so I don't actually have to split that one. But the first one, in order to get the absolute value away, I had to split it. Okay, so I'm showing you all three different options. You could either split it and solve. You could get a no solution if it's equal to a negative, or if it's equal to 0, then you might not, you really have no reason to have to split it because 0 and negative 0 are really the same thing. Okay, so those are possible answers. You can get 1, 2, or have no solution as you're going through. Make sure you go through and work through each one of the rest of the problems on here. Match it up with the type of problem that we have in the examples, and ask questions when you have them. Oh, sorry about that. So when we look at this, here's the steps to go through and finish that. You get the absolute value by itself. If the absolute value is equal to a negative, that's a no solution. Then you need to get rid of the absolute value by making two problems, one which is the negative side and one's the positive side. And then you need to solve the resulting equations and go ahead and check your answers, make sure that your answers are making sense in the particular problems that you're doing.